The Veluxy Dominion had ruled the stars for 10,000 years. Their empire stretched across 4-star clusters and held 37 conquered species under their control. They were tall creatures with gray skin and 4 arms. Their eyes glowed red in the darkness of space. They believed they were the greatest beings in the universe. They had never lost a war. They had never faced an enemy they could not crush. When their scout ships found a small, yellow star at the edge of the Orion Arm, they did not think much of it. The star had 8 planets. The 3rd planet was blue and green, covered with water and life. The scouts watched this world for 3 days. They saw ships moving between planets. They saw space stations orbiting moons. They saw a civilization that had spread across its solar system. The scouts sent their report back to the Dominion. A new species had been found. They called themselves humans. They seemed peaceful. They had no great warships. They had no weapons pointed at the stars. The Dominion's leaders smiled when they read this report. Another weak species to conquer. Another world to add to their empire. Supreme Commander Thalvex was given the honor of the conquest. He was the greatest warrior the Dominion had ever produced. He had destroyed entire civilizations. He had burned worlds to ash. When he looked at the images of the human homeworld, he felt only contempt. These soft creatures, with their strange faces and their 2 arms, would fall like all the others. Thalvex gathered 12 of his finest warships and jumped into human space without warning. He did not send a message. He did not ask for permission. He did not care about borders or laws. The strong took what they wanted. That was the only law the Dominion knew. Admiral Una was 53 years old. She had served in the Terran Defense Force for 30 years. Her hair was turning gray, and her eyes had seen many things. She commanded the deep space station called the Eternal Soul. It floated at the edge of human space, watching the darkness between stars. For 20 years, nothing had come from that darkness. Una had started to believe that humanity was alone in the universe. She was drinking tea in her office when the alarms began to scream. Lieutenant Juan burst through her door. He was young, barely 25, with a face full of fear. "Admiral, we have contacts. 12 unknown vessels. They crossed into our space 4 minutes ago." Una set down her tea. Her hand did not shake. "Have they responded to our hails?" "No, Admiral. We have sent 17 messages on all frequencies. They are not answering." Una stood and walked to the command center. The screen showed 12 shapes moving through the void. They were black and angular, like knives cutting through the darkness. They were heading toward the inner colonies at high speed. "Where are they going?" Una asked. Juan checked his instruments. His face went pale. "New Busan, Admiral. The mining colony? They will arrive in 6 hours." New Busan was a small colony on a moon orbiting a gas giant. 3,000 people lived there. Miners, engineers, families, children who had never seen Earth. Una felt something cold settle in her stomach. "Contact Earth," she ordered. "Tell them what is happening. And get me a channel to those ships. I want to talk to whoever is commanding them." For 3 hours, Una tried to reach the alien fleet. She sent messages of peace. She sent warnings. She sent pleas. The alien ships did not respond. They moved through space like predators hunting prey. When the Veluxy fleet reached New Busan, they did not slow down. They did not scan the colony. They did not try to communicate. Thalvex simply gave an order, and his ships opened fire. The first shots hit the colony's shield generators. The second shots hit the life support systems. The third shots hit the residential areas where families were eating dinner, children were doing homework, where people were laughing and living their lives. In 7 minutes, New Busan was dead. 3,000 humans. Gone. Their bodies floated in the vacuum of space. Alongside broken metal and shattered dreams, Admiral Una watched it happen on her screens. She saw the colony break apart. She heard the final transmissions. A mother calling for her children. A man saying goodbye to his wife. A little girl asking why the sky was on fire. Una did not cry. She did not scream. She stood very still and let the cold feeling in her stomach spread through her entire body. When she spoke, her voice was calm. Lieutenant Wan, send a message to Earth. Priority Alpha. 3 words. What words, Admiral? They killed us. On Earth, the message arrived at midnight. The President of the United Terran Assembly was pulled from her bed. Military commanders were called from their homes. Scientists and diplomats gathered in secure rooms. Within 1 hour, every leader on Earth had seen the footage from New Busan. The assembly met at dawn. There was no debate. There were no long speeches. A vote was called. Every hand rose together. Total response authorization. These 3 words had not been spoken in 200 years. They meant that humanity was going to war. Not a limited war. Not a careful war. A total war with every weapon, every ship, every soldier that humanity could gather. Chairman Sung stood before the assembly. He was an old man with white hair and kind eyes. Those eyes were not kind today. We did not seek this, he said. We did not want this. For 200 years, we have looked at the stars with hope. We dreamed of finding friends among the distant suns. Instead, we found monsters. Paused. They killed 3,000 of our people, our children, our families. They did not warn us. They did not give us a chance to surrender or flee. They simply killed. Sung's voice grew harder. The universe needs to learn something today. Humanity does not start wars, but we finish them. We end them so completely that no one ever thinks of attacking us again. Across human space, ships began to move. Not the cargo vessels and science ships that the galaxy had seen. These were different. These were the shadow fleets, hidden in asteroid fields and hollow moons. Massive warships that had never fired their weapons in anger. Planet crackers that could split a world in half. Void hunters that could appear from nowhere and vanish like ghosts. For 200 years, humanity had kept these ships secret. They hoped they would never need them. They were wrong. Admiral Yuna received her new orders. She was to take command of the 1st Defense Fleet and stop the alien advance. She looked at the orders for a long time. Then she looked at the last image from New Busan. A little girl's toy floating in space. They came into our home, Yuna said quietly. They killed our children. And they did not even tell us their names. She turned to Wan. Tell the fleet to prepare for departure. We move in 6 hours. Where are we going, Admiral? Yuna's eyes were cold. To teach the galaxy why humanity stopped fighting each other. Far away, Supreme Commander Thalvek celebrated his easy victory. He had no idea that he had just woken something terrible. Something that the universe had never seen before. The humans were coming. And they were angry. Supreme Commander Thalvek stood on the bridge of his flagship and smiled. The destruction of the human colony had been easy. It's too easy. These creatures were even weaker than he had expected. Their shields had fallen in seconds. Their buildings had burned like paper. Their screams had been short and quiet. He turned to his communications officer. Send a message to the Dominion. Tell them the conquest is proceeding as planned. We will reach their homeworld within 1 month. The officer bowed. Yes, Supreme Commander. Also, we are detecting some movement in the system ahead. Thalvek waved his hand. Probably more of their cargo ships running away. Ignore them, Supreme Commander. There are many of them. Something in the officer's voice made Thalvek look at the screens. At first, he saw nothing but empty space. Then the space began to change. Points of light appeared, growing brighter and brighter. Ships were emerging from fold space. Human ships, 1 ship appeared. Then 10, then 50, then 100. Thalvek felt his blood turn cold. How many? The officer's hands were shaking. 147 warships, Supreme Commander. And they are enormous. The human ships were nothing like the small vessels the scouts had reported. These were monsters of metal and fire. The largest ones were 5 kilometers long, covered with weapons that glowed with terrible light. They moved with a grace that seemed impossible for their size. And they were everywhere, surrounding the Veluxy fleet like wolves around wounded prey. Fleet Admiral Tay stood on the bridge of the Indomitable. It was the greatest warship humanity had ever built. 2,000 crew members worked inside its hull. Its weapons could crack a planet's crust. For 30 years, it had floated in silence, waiting for a day that everyone hoped would never come. That day had come. Tay was 60 years old. His face was hard and lined with old scars. He had spent his entire life preparing for war while praying for peace. When he heard about New Busan, something inside him had broken. Not his courage, not his resolve. His hope, Captain Nari, stood beside him. She was young, only 32, but her eyes looked much older today. Her parents had lived on New Busan. Her little sister had been studying to be a doctor there. They were all gone now. Nari had not cried when she heard the news. She had simply requested a transfer to the First Strike Armada. She wanted to look into the eyes of the beings who had killed her family. "They are hailing us, Admiral," the communications officer reported. Tay nodded. "Put it through." The face of Supreme Commander Thalvex appeared on the screen. His red eyes were wide with something that might have been surprise. Or fear. "Human vessels, you are interfering with Dominion operations. Stand down immediately, or you will be destroyed." Tay looked at the alien for a long moment. "You attacked our colony. You killed 3,000 innocent people. You gave them no warning and no chance to surrender." "They were weak," Thalvex said. "The weak exist to serve the strong. This is the law of the universe." "No," Tay said quietly. "That is your law. We have a different one." He cut the communication and turned to his crew. His voice carried across the fleet through the quantum links. Every human soldier heard his words. 200 years ago, humanity almost destroyed itself. We fought war after war, killing millions of our own kind. We burned our cities. We poisoned our lands. We came within a hair of extinction. Tay paused, and then we stopped. We put down our weapons and chose a different path. We decided that war was madness. That peace was the only way forward. He pointed at the Veluxy ships on the screen. We stopped fighting because we believed that nothing was worth the cost of war. Today we learned that we were wrong. Some things are worth fighting for. Our children. Our homes. Our right to exist in peace. Tay's voice grew harder. "These creatures killed our people like they were nothing. They laughed while our children burned. They think we are weak because we chose peace." His eyes blazed. "Show them what human weakness looks like." The battle began. The Veluxy opened fire first. Their weapons were powerful, designed to break apart the shields of lesser species. But human shields were different. They were built by people who had once pointed nuclear weapons at each other. People who understood destruction on a level that Veluxy could not imagine. The Veluxy shots splashed. Against human shields like water, against stone, then the humans fired back. The Indomitable's main cannon released a beam of pure light that cut through. A Veluxy cruiser like a knife through smoke. The ship did not explode. It simply ceased to exist. One moment it was there. The next moment, there was only empty space and a few floating pieces of metal. Captain Nari commanded the forward weapons array. Her hands moved across the controls with perfect precision. Each shot found its target. Each target died. She did not smile. She did not cry. She simply did her job. 3 enemy ships destroyed, she reported, moving to secondary targets. Around her, the other human ships were doing the same. They moved through the Veluxy fleet like ghosts, appearing and disappearing, striking from angles that should have been impossible. The Veluxy had never faced an enemy like this. Their commanders screamed orders that made no sense. Their ships crashed into each other trying to escape Thalvex. Fleet died and felt true terror for the first time in his life. These humans were not weak. They were monsters wearing the masks of peaceful traders. They had hidden their true strength from the galaxy. They had waited in the darkness, silent and patient, until someone was foolish enough to wake them. Else ships retreat. He screamed, "Fall back to Dominion space." But it was too late. The human ships had surrounded them completely. There was nowhere to run. The Void Hunters appeared from nowhere, blocking every escape route. The planet crackers moved into position, their massive forms blocking out the stars. Admiral Tay appeared on the screen one final time. "You killed our children," he said. "You burned our homes. You thought we would fall like the others you have conquered," shook his head slowly. "You were wrong." The final assault lasted 3 minutes. When it was over, not a single Veluxy ship remained intact. Some had been vaporized. Some had been cut into pieces. Some had simply surrendered and been captured. Supreme Commander Thalvex was among the survivors. Dragged from his broken flagship by human soldiers, Captain Nari stood before him in the holding cell. She looked at the being who had ordered the death of her family. Thalvex expected her to kill him. He expected torture and pain. That was what the Dominion did to prisoners. Nari just looked at him with empty eyes. "You took everything from me," she said quietly. "My parents. My sister. My home. Then kill me," Thalvex said. "That is your right." Nari shook her head. "No, death is too easy for you. You are going to live. You are going to watch as we tear your empire apart. You are going to see every species you enslaved walk free. And you are going to know that you caused it all. That your arrogance and cruelty brought down everything your people built." She turned and walked away. That is the human way. The battle was over. The war had just begun. And across the galaxy, species who had lived in fear of the Dominion heard the news. The Veluxy had been defeated by a species no one had ever heard of. A species called humanity hope began to spread through the stars. The news of the Veluxy defeat spread across the galaxy like fire. For 10,000 years, the Dominion had been unbeatable. Their fleets had crushed every enemy. Their soldiers had conquered every world. Species learned to bow before them or die. There was no other choice. Now, in a single day, everything had changed. 12 Veluxy warships had been destroyed by a species that no one had ever heard of. The Supreme Commander himself had been captured. The mighty Dominion had been humbled by creatures from a small blue planet at the edge of nowhere. On the Dominion homeworld of Vilox Prime, the ruling Senate gathered in emergency session. These were the oldest and most powerful Veluxy beings who had lived for centuries and commanded trillions of subjects. They sat in a great circular chamber, their red eyes glowing in the darkness. "This is impossible," Senator Crick said. His voice shook with anger and fear. "No species has ever defeated us. These humans must have used some kind of trick, some secret weapon." "The weapon was not secret," another senator replied. "We have analyzed the battle data. The humans simply had better ships, better weapons, and better tactics than us. They outmatched us in every way. Then where did they come from? How did a species develop such power without us noticing?" No one had an answer. The humans had appeared from nowhere, a nightmare that no one saw coming. And now the Senate had to decide what to do next. "We must send more ships," Crix declared. 50 fleets. 100 fleets. We will drown them in our numbers, and if that fails, we have over 200 systems to defend. If we send all our ships to attack the humans, the conquered species might rebel." Crix laughed. "Rebel? Those creatures are broken. They have been slaves for generations. They have forgotten how to fight." He was wrong. On Earth, Director Minji of the Terran Intelligence Bureau stood before the United Terran Assembly. She was a small woman with sharp eyes and a sharper mind. For 20 years, she had studied the galaxy from the shadows. She knew more about alien civilizations than anyone else alive. "The Veluxy Dominion controls 212 star systems," she said. 37 species live under their rule. Most were conquered through war. Some surrendered without fighting. All of them are treated as slaves. Chairman Sung leaned forward. "What do we know about these conquered species?" "They hate the Veluxy. Every single one of them. The Dominion rules through fear and violence. They take the strongest members of each species and force them to fight in their armies. They take the smartest and make them work in their factories. The rest are used for labor or simply killed if they cause trouble." Minji pressed a button, and images appeared on the screen. Alien faces of every shape and color. Some had scales. Some had fur. Some had no faces at all, just clusters of eyes and tentacles. But they all had one thing in common. They looked broken, defeated, hopeless. These people have been waiting for someone to save them, Mingi said. For thousands of years they have prayed for a miracle. They have told stories about beings from the stars who would come and break their chains. She paused. We can be those beings. Admiral Yuna spoke from her seat. You are suggesting we invade Dominion space? That is a massive undertaking. We would be fighting far from home, in territory we do not know, as Minji said. But we would not be fighting alone. If we can show the conquered species that the Veluxi can be beaten, they will rise up. They will fight alongside us. The Dominion will face enemies on every front. The assembly debated for 3 hours. Some wanted to stay home and build defenses. Some wanted to negotiate peace. But most understood the truth. The Veluxi would never stop coming. They would never accept defeat. The only way to end this war was to end the Dominion itself. The vote passed. Humanity would take the war to the enemy. Vice Admiral Deso. Bora was given command of the Second Fleet. She was 45 years old, a tall woman with a calm voice and ice in her veins. She had never lost a battle. She did not plan to start now. Her fleet carried more than weapons. It carried doctors and engineers. It carried food and medicine. It carried hope in the form of a message that would be broadcast on all frequencies across Dominion space. To the enslaved peoples of the Dominion, the message said, Humanity stands with you. We have defeated the Veluxi in battle. We are coming to your worlds, not to conquer, not to enslave. We are coming to set you free. Your chains end today. The first target was a world called Kethra Prime. It was home to the Kethri, insectoid species with 4 arms and compound eyes. They had been slaves for 300 years. Their population had been cut in half by Veluxi cruelty. They worked in mines and factories until they died, and their children were taken to serve in the Dominion's armies. When the Second Fleet appeared in orbit around Kethra Prime, the Veluxi garrison commander laughed. He had 50,000 soldiers and orbital defense platforms. The humans were walking into a trap. Admiral Bora did not attack the defenses directly. Instead, she broadcast the message to the planet's surface. Every Kethri heard it. Every slave in every mine and factory heard the words, Your chains end today. The rebellion started in the northern mines. A Kethri worker named Click, so old that he had forgotten his real name, heard the message and felt something he had not felt in decades. Hope. He picked up a mining tool and struck the Veluxi guard standing over him. Within an hour, the mines were in Kethri's hands. Within 2 hours, the factories had joined the uprising. Within 6 hours, 50,000 Kethri were marching on the Veluxi military base. Armed with nothing but tools and fury, Admiral Bora watched from orbit and gave the order. Land the ground forces. Support the uprising. Minimum civilian casualties. Human soldiers dropped from the sky in assault pods. They hit the ground running, their weapons blazing. But they did not fire at the Kethri. They fired at the Veluxi. They fought alongside the slaves, not against them. Colonel Yunbi led the assault on the main Veluxi base. She was a small woman, barely 5 feet tall, but she moved like a storm. Her soldiers followed her through the gates and into the heart of the enemy fortress. The fighting was brutal. The Veluxi were strong and desperate, but they were also scared. They had never faced humans on the ground before. When the last Veluxi soldier surrendered, Yunbi walked into the slave quarters beneath the base. What she found there made her want to weep. Hundreds of Kethri, chained to the walls, starving, beaten, some of them were children. Yunbi knelt before a young Kethri, female who could not have been more than 10 years old in human terms. The child was shaking with fear. She had never seen a creature like Yunbi before. It is okay, Yunbi said softly. You are safe now. No one will hurt you anymore. The child looked at her with huge compound eyes. Are you? Are you the ones from the stars? The ones the old stories talk about? Yunbi smiled. I do not know about stories, but I am here to help you. We all are. She broke the child's chains. Then she broke the chains of every other Kethri in that room. When she emerged into the sunlight, thousands of freed slaves were waiting outside. They looked at the humans with wonder and tears. The old Kethri named Click walked forward. He was injured, bleeding from a wound on his head. But he stood tall and proud. 300 years, he said. We waited 300 years for this day. We had given up hope. We thought no one would ever come. He bowed his head. Thank you. Thank you for remembering us. Yunbi saluted him. We did not do this alone. You fought for your own freedom. We just helped. Within a month, 12 worlds had been liberated. The conquered species were rising up everywhere. The Dominion was burning from within, and the humans were fanning the flames. The message had been received. The galaxy was waking up. The Veluxi Dominion was falling apart. In 3 months, humanity and its new allies had liberated 40 worlds. Species that had been slaves for centuries were now free. They were joining the war against their former masters. Adding their ships and soldiers to the growing alliance, Supreme Commander Thalvex had escaped from human custody during a prisoner transfer. It had cost him everything. His honor, his reputation, his left arm, which a human soldier had shot off during his escape. But he was free, and he was determined to save his people. He gathered the survivors of his command and raced back to Vilox Prime, Dominion homeworld. The Senate had to be warned. The humans were coming. They would not stop until the Dominion was destroyed. The Senate listened to his words with cold eyes. They blamed him for starting this war. They blamed him for losing so badly. But they also knew he was right. The humans were coming. And if Velox Prime fell, the Dominion would die. We must gather every ship, Thalvex said. Every soldier. Every weapon. We will make our stand here at the heart of our empire. Let the humans come. We will drown them in our blood. For once, the Senate agreed with him. Orders went out across the remaining Dominion worlds. Every warship that could fly was sent to Velox Prime. Every soldier that could fight was transported to the homeworld. Defense platforms were built in orbit. Ground batteries were dug into the planet's surface. In 2 months, Velox Prime became a fortress. 400 warships circled the planet. 20 defense platforms bristled with weapons. 3 million soldiers waited on the ground. It was the largest military force the Dominion had ever assembled. Let them come, Thalvex said. We will show them that the Veluxi do not surrender. Admiral Una stood on the bridge of the Eternal Soul and looked at the tactical display. She had been given command of the final assault. Under her command was the largest fleet in human history. 200 human warships. 50 ships from the Kethri, 30 ships from the Malin, 20 ships from the Suri species that had been enemies 3 months ago, were now brothers in arms. Commander Jiho stood beside her. He was 28 years old, the youngest officer to ever reach his rank. He had earned his position through brilliance and courage, leading impossible missions behind enemy lines. Now he would help lead the attack on the Dominion homeworld. The enemy fleet is holding position, Jiho reported. They are not coming out to meet us. They want us to attack the planet directly, Una nodded. They are hoping their defenses will be enough, that we will break ourselves against their walls. Will we? Una did not answer right away. She was thinking about New Busan, about the 3,000 people who had died. About the little girl's toy floating in space. She had carried that image in her heart for months. It had given her strength when she was tired. It had kept her going when she wanted to stop. But she was also thinking about the Veluxi civilians on the planet below. Millions of them. Old ones and young ones. Families who had never harmed anyone. Children who had never held a weapon. They had not chosen this war. They had not asked to be born into an empire built on cruelty. We are not them, Una said quietly. We will not be them. She opened a channel to the planet below. Her voice carried across space, reaching every ship and every station and every radio on Vilox Prime. People of the Dominion. This is Admiral Una of the United Terran Alliance. Your leaders started a war with a species that wanted only peace. They killed our children. They burned our homes. They thought we were weak. She paused. They were wrong. We have destroyed your fleets. We have freed your slaves. We have watched your empire crumble. And now we stand above your homeworld with enough firepower to burn it to glass. On the planet below, millions of Viloxi listened. They had been told that the humans were monsters, savage beasts who ate their enemies alive. They expected to hear threats of destruction and death. What they heard instead surprised them. But we are not like you, Una continued. We do not kill for pleasure. We do not conquer for glory. We did not want this war. We wanted to be left alone. You would not let us. So here's my offer. Surrender now. Lay down your weapons. Hand over your leaders for trial, and in return, your civilians will be spared. Your culture will survive. Your planet will remain. Her voice grew harder. Refuse, and there will be no Velox Prime by morning. No cities, no monuments, no future. Your species will become a memory. A warning to others who think about attacking humanity. You have 1 hour to decide. Choose wisely. The channel closed. Silence fell across space. In the command center of the defense fleet, Supreme Commander Thalvex screamed with rage. She dares to offer us terms? We are the Veluxi. We do not surrender. We do not bow. He turned to his officers. All ships, prepare to attack. We will show these humans that we would rather die than submit. But his officers did not move. They stood in silence, looking at each other, looking at the screens that showed the human fleet, looking at the numbers that told them the truth. They could not win. Everyone knew it. The humans had proven again and again that their technology was superior. Their tactics were better. Their soldiers were stronger. Fighting would only mean death. Supreme Commander, one officer said carefully, perhaps we should consider the offer. The humans have shown mercy to other species. They freed the Kethri instead of killing them. They rebuilt the worlds they conquered. Perhaps mercy. Thalvix laughed. There is no mercy in war. Only victory and defeat. And I would rather die than be defeated. Then you will die alone. The voice came from behind him. Thalvex turned and found himself facing a dozen soldiers with weapons pointed at his chest. Leading them was General Vorn, his second in command. What is the meaning of this? Thalvex demanded. The meaning is simple, Vorn said. You started this war with your arrogance. You destroyed our fleet with your stupidity. You brought the humans to our doorstep with your cruelty. And now you want to sacrifice our entire species for your pride. Vorn shook his head. No more. The Senate has already voted. We will accept the human terms. You are under arrest. Thalvex stared at him in disbelief. You cannot do this. I am the Supreme Commander. I am the greatest warrior our people have ever known. You were, Vorn said. Now you are nothing. The soldiers moved forward and put chains on Thalvex's arms. He struggled and screamed, but it made no difference. The beings he had commanded for decades dragged him away like a common criminal. Admiral, Una watched the Veloxi fleet power down its weapons. One by one, the ships lowered their shields and transmitted surrender codes. The defense platforms went dark. The ground batteries fell silent. She had expected to feel triumph, joy, relief. Instead, she felt only emptiness. So many had died for this moment. So many would never see it. Colonel Yunbi's voice came through the communicator. Admiral, the enemy is surrendering. What are your orders? Una looked out at the Veluxi homeworld. A blue and green planet, much like Earth. Millions of people who would live or die based on her next words. Accept their surrender, she said. Send humanitarian teams to the surface. Make sure the civilians have food and water and medicine. Show them what humanity really is. Yes, Admiral. The war was over. The Dominion had fallen. And humanity had won not through destruction, but through choice. They had been given the chance to burn a world. Instead, they chose to save it. That was the human way. 1 year had passed since the fall of the Veluxi Dominion. 1 year since humanity had fought its first war among the stars and won. 1 year since the galaxy had changed forever. On Earth, in the Great Hall of the United Nations building, Representatives from 43 species gathered for the signing of the new Galactic Compact. It was the largest diplomatic event in the history of the universe. Beings of every shape and size filled the chamber. Some breathed oxygen. Some breathed methane. Some did not breathe at all. But they had all come for the same reason. They had come to build a better galaxy. Admiral Una stood near the front of the chamber. She was not wearing her military uniform today. Instead, she wore simple black clothes, the traditional dress of mourning in her culture. Even on a day of celebration, she wanted to remember those who had been lost. Chairman Sung walked to the podium. He looked older than he had a year ago. The war had taken something from him, as it had taken something from everyone. But there was still strength in his voice when he spoke. 1 year ago, strangers came to our home uninvited. They killed our people without warning or mercy. They thought we were weak. They thought we would be easy to conquer. Paused. They were wrong. But we are not here today to celebrate our victory. We are here to ensure that such violence never happens again. For too long, this galaxy has been ruled by fear. The strong crushed the weak. The many enslaved the few. There was no law except the law of power. Today, that ends. He held up a document. This is the new Galactic Compact. It establishes 3 simple principles. First, every species has the right to its own territory. Borders are to be respected. No one may enter another space without permission. Second, every species has the right to defend itself. If one is attacked, all will respond. An attack on one is an attack on all. Third, every sentient being has fundamental rights that cannot be taken away. The right to live. The right to be free. The right to choose their own future. These principles may seem simple, but they have never existed in this galaxy before. Today we create them together. One by one, the representatives came forward to sign. The Kethri ambassador, a female named Chitter, was the first. Her compound eyes glistened with tears as she pressed her mark to the document. My people were slaves for 300 years, she said. We had forgotten what freedom meant. The humans reminded us. They did not just break our chains. They showed us that we were worth saving. For that, we will be grateful forever. The Malin representative was next. Then the Suri. Then species whose names humans could barely pronounce. Former enemies stood together. Former slaves signed alongside their liberators. It was a sight that would have been impossible 1 year ago, when the last signature was placed. The chamber erupted in applause. Beings who had never met before embraced. Old hatreds were forgotten. New friendships were born. Admiral Una did not clap. She stood quietly, watching the celebration with eyes that held both joy and sorrow. Director Minji appeared beside her. You should be happy, Admiral. You won the war. You saved the galaxy. You are a hero. I do not feel like a hero, Una said. I feel tired. So many people died. Human and Veluxi and Kethri and all the others. All that death and suffering. Was it worth it? Minji considered the question. Ask the child who is chained in the Veluxi mines. Ask the families who can now live without fear. Ask the species who thought they would be slaves forever and are now free. She put a hand on Una's shoulder. You did not choose this war, Admiral, but you ended it. And because of you, the galaxy is better than it was. Una nodded slowly. I suppose you are right. But I still wish it had not been necessary. So do we all. Across the chamber, Commander Jiho was surrounded by a group of alien children. They had come with their parents for the signing ceremony, and they had never seen a human before. Jiho was showing them a simple trick, making a coin appear and disappear between his fingers. The children clicked and chirped with delight. How do you do that? A small Kethri asked. Magic, Jiho said with a smile. Human magic. Can you teach me? Of course. But first, you have to promise to use it only for good. Only to make people happy. Can you do that? The child nodded eagerly. Jiho began to show her the trick, moving his hands slowly so she could follow. Colonel Yunbi stood near the refreshment table. holding a glass of something that was supposed to be wine, but did not taste like any wine she had ever had. She was talking with a group of former Veluxi soldiers who had switched sides during the war. "I never thought I would be drinking with humans," one of them said. His name was Torn, and he had been a captain in the Dominion fleet before the rebellion. "My father always told me that aliens were inferior, that they existed to be conquered. Now I am standing in their hall, signing their treaty, drinking their terrible wine." Yunbi laughed. "The wine is not that bad. It is worse than bad. It is an insult to taste everywhere." But Torn was smiling as he said it. "Still, I would rather drink bad wine with friends than good wine with enemies. That is the most human thing I have ever heard of Veluxi say. Perhaps we are not so different after all." They raised their glasses. Together, Captain Nari sat alone in a corner of the chamber. She had requested a quiet assignment after the war, something far from the front lines. She was now commanding a cargo ship that delivered supplies to the liberated worlds. It was not glorious work, but it was important, and it gave her time to heal. A shadow fell over her. She looked up and saw Click, the old Kethri who had started the rebellion on his homeworld. He moved slowly now. His injuries from the uprising never fully healed, but his compound eyes were bright with life. "You were the one who lost her family at New Busan?" he said. It was not a question. "Yes,